It seems like our freedom of speech is under constant assault from the woke mob these days. And their latest victim is Preston Grasshoppers Rugby Club. So the club's crime? They dared to host a charity event hosted by our very own Nigel Farage, with the profits going to shock horror. How terrible is this? A local hospice. Hysterical fans cut up their membership cards and ended up forcing the club to cancel the event and apologise simply because they disagreed with Nigel's views. Perhaps more concerning was local councillor Kuhn Potter's delight in the club being intimidated into removing someone's platform because of their politics. The club claimed they weren't the event organisers and added in a statement following feedback from our members and wider comments on social media. The club has taken the decision to cancel the booking. We apologise for posting the event on the website and giving the impression that we are the promoters of the event or endorse any political views. Well, to respond to this for the first time, Nigel Farage joins me now. Nigel, you've been cancelled again.
I know, and I wasn't on my show earlier. I was in Brussels for the day, Dan. The first time for almost 2 years. And I went to...
Do you have PTSD when you go back?
Bit of unfinished business over there. The best part was, as I came back through Eurostar tonight and showed my passport to the Belgium passport control, he looked at me and said, "Well done. You'll be better off out of this mess." I like that. So the story is very simple. I was invited by some very prominent members of Preston Grasshoppers Rugby Club who thought, what a fun idea to get Nigel along for the evening, to use the club as a venue and to raise money for the local St Catherine's hospice. And it was 75 quid a head, and we were selling a lot of tickets. So you're looking actually for the hospice at a very substantial check. I was happy to do it. The event was non-political. The advert said it was about my life, the people I've met, the things I've done. So a fun evening. You know, I'd speak, take questions, we'd raise money, we'd do an auction. You know, a 5-figure check, a big 5-figure check was going to that hospice for doing it. Now, one or two very politically active members didn't like it and for a pose cut up their cards. I mean, they're not really leaving the rugby club, believe you me. Then you get social media. You get the normal hate mob on social media. Interestingly, the most abusive of them and the most prominent of them, who got quoted in all the local media, also had an EU flag on his Twitter bio.
Of course they did.
Kind of tells
of course they did.
Fair bit.
Yeah.
So I'm not a politician. I'm retired. You know, I'm not active in politics at all.
You're a star TV presenter.
Yeah, but the hatred of the globalists, the hatred of the Marxists, the hatred of the Ramonas is such, they want me cancelled as a human being. So they bombard the committee. The committee throw their hands up in horror and think, oh my God, everyone's going to leave the club. The chairman of the committee has now resigned. There are senior members of Preston Grasshoppers, including former international rugby players, who are disgusted at what's happened. And the hospice have sent round a note that looks like the kind of thing written by an ISIS hostage. You know, that's how scared they've been. So the mob's hatred of me and my role in promoting Brexit in this country over 25 years means they'll stop at nothing, even if the local hospice is the loser. And I think, Dan, I would suggest that tells you more about them than it does about me. But I'm pretty disgusted by it. But, you know, the cowardice of people.
Yeah.
They get emails from people who have never supported Preston Grasshoppers, never been involved in rugby, never given the club or the hospice a penny, and yet they're bullied into submission.
I know, but Nigel, what has to happen in these cases, because it's going on all too often now, is whatever club or corporate or organisation or university is at the centre of this so-called scandal, which we know has been cooked up by your opponents, they have to ignore the emails and they have to ignore the Twitter posts, because you or me could arrange for 10,000 people to organise, to send emails to a corporate too. It's not genuine outrage, it's confected outrage, and it should be ignored.
Yeah, it's confected, it's organised, it's funded. I mean, this is modern day Marxism.
Yeah.
It is to stamp out of public life anybody whose views they don't appreciate. And this lot will never forgive me for Brexit. Boris isn't the enemy because they all know he was just a sort of last minute opportunist. In the minds of these globalists, I was the person that poisoned the minds of the British public, and I should never, ever be forgiven. And normally, Dan, and this has happened to me dozens of times. I mean, venues have pulled out from events dozens of times. I'm used to it. But the fact this was in aid of a local hospice, who themselves are now using almost the identical language to that is being used by the Twitter mob, is disappointing. And I'll be honest, a little bit dispiriting.
Well, I actually would go further than that. I think it's despicable. I think it's shameful. We know, Nigel, it's only ever the far left extremists and the Ramonas that act like this, because folk like you or me actually absolutely believe that people on the far left should have a platform. And that's why I stood up, for example, for Novara Media, even though I think there are a bunch of communist loons who have terrible views on almost everything, but I don't think they should be deplatformed by YouTube. And so I really hope both ends of the political spectrum start standing up against this nonsense, because otherwise it's going to be very scary where we end up.
Well, yes, I mean, there's a limitless number of people that could be cancelled, both in contemporary life, but also historically. I mean, the attempt to demonise everybody that's had anything to do with the building of our country, of our nation, its historical role, this is limitless. And, it needs fair-minded people, but it needs strong people to stand up and say, we will not put up with this. Sadly, the committee at Preston Grasshoppers were not made of the right stuff. And I think you will find a couple of people falsely cutting up their cards online. I think the reaction the other way they're going to get from their members is one of real anger and real fury, and that will come from a lot of people, not a handful of Labour councillors and active Ramona leftists.
I know, but it's funny, isn't it, Nigel? They don't give a damn about how ordinary people feel about politicians, because you look around the world, and I take four very significant populist political figures. So we'll take you, we'll take Donald Trump in the US, we'll take Boris here, and say we'll take Tony Abbott in Australia as well. And actually, all four of you are rejected on a daily basis by polite society, who just do not care about the voters.
Well, I'm not sure Boris is in that list, because Boris went for Brexit for purely political opportunistic reasons, joined the campaign at 5 minutes to midnight. I'm jolly pleased that he did. But Boris, of course, fits many of their criteria. Global warming, liberal attitudes, greenery at every level. So Boris, they might scream and shout at Boris. They do it because he's the Prime Minister. Actually, he's so frightened of them that he's prepared to bend to them. Others of us are not prepared to bend to them. And I've had to face this mob. I've had to face this mob more than anybody in this country, day after day, year after year. And it feels to me today they will simply never, ever give up. They don't believe in free speech. They don't believe actually in basic human rights, ironically. No. And they couldn't care less if their collateral damage is a local hospice. And it says so much about them. Yeah. But they're there. They're not going away in a hurry.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.